Okay, so I've already introduced myself, and really I think what's been some concern, particularly over the period where we've been in lockdown and the COVID-19 restrictions, we've all steered towards online activity, whether that be young people, parents or carers, professionals. We're all enjoying the virtual world. So there are some key messages within the presentation around risk and vulnerability for everyone, really. So if we go to slide 2, Devon. So this presentation is going to cover what does good look like, risks and vulnerability online, the sharing of images, what can you do? So that's about what can you do in terms of sharing messages with your peers? How do you think you can promote safety in terms of online activity? What do you think works well for yourselves as young people? I think those messages are really need to be clear and need to be shared to be able to educate, inform, advise, guidance. So this resource is a Thinkuknow resource, which is for, it's aimed really at secondary school young people and also for parents and carers. We'll talk a little bit about the reporting mechanisms as well. So we'll go to the next slide, Devon. So we say that young people, this looks like it's somebody talking to their own child, but I think if anybody's got any concerns amongst their peer group, you always need to find a good time and a place to talk about it. So a safe space to talk about it. Is there a place where you might want to offer information and advice and guidance to somebody where the space is safe and they are able to ask difficult questions? People are worried about asking questions. Young people are worried about questions, asking difficult questions. They don't always have the confidence to ask those difficult questions. It's around, maybe if you have a concern around your peer, how you approach them. So if you think that somebody's talking to somebody online that they shouldn't be, or sharing an image that they shouldn't be sharing, how do you approach that subject topic? And how do you explain any worries that you might have without offending someone or causing confrontation, which we should be avoiding? So it's about maybe raising the conversation about what platforms they use, where do they go online, which platforms do they find are more beneficial to them in terms of keeping themselves safe? What do they like about the platforms that they're using? How do they engage with them? Is it that they've been introduced to a platform that's new to them? What don't they like? So is there anybody that's making them feel uncomfortable? Is there anything that's making them feel uncomfortable? Is there something that they're doing that they know they really shouldn't be getting involved with, like conversations, pictures, images? And it's about making sure that they know who they can go to. So for example, if you're there just to listen and not judge, your friend or your peer is more likely to approach you to ask for advice. Next slide, Devon. So this is a short clip film, because often young people think us oldies, we're never around and building relationships. Or I guess the second question that young people ask us is, how did you make relationships without the virtual world? Well, guess what? People like me did. So we'll show this brief clip and you'll understand. It might answer some of those questions. I think everybody knows Romeo and Juliet, or almost everybody. Thanks for that, Devon. So it shows you what the world is like today in terms of connecting with other people. It's instant, it's exciting, it's passionate for young people. It makes people feel good. People believe that it builds their confidence, that it creates resilience amongst some of the peer pressures around relationships. It makes us look at different opportunities, different examples of fun or activity or creativity. But when you see it from a professional point of view or a parent's point of view, that passion and that creativity and that excitement doesn't come without some vulnerability and risk. We come to the next slide, Devon. So there is something for us around young people when we talk about that creativity, know what they want to view. They know where they want to go with it. They know that they want to connect with other people, to chat, to be informed, to share and to befriend, especially if you're feeling alone and you don't feel like you fit in somewhere, if you don't have a positive peer group and you're trying to get away from it. If things maybe aren't going as well as they could be at home, then it's reaching out to other people that might understand where you are in life and in the virtual world. Go to the next slide, please. So one of those risk factors, and I guess this is where my role comes into it, is around sexual exploitation. Not just locally, not just regionally, but nationally. We have this real risk, unfortunately, of people who have an interest in young people and our children. So sexual exploitation is often seen at the beginning where friendships are formed. I've already talked about a little bit about those opportunities that the online world creates. People who have an interest in children will want to create opportunities. They will want young people to explore maybe their sexual feelings online, which, you know, young people, that's the norm, yeah? For young people wanting to experiment and explore where they are during their adolescence. Unfortunately, perpetrators of such kind will engage with conversations and reassure young people that it's okay to show images, share images, use terminology that's very sexualized. They will build a relationship. They will make sure that that young person feels wanted and needed and actually understands everything that's going on. And the final thing they can probably offer is protection. If some things aren't going on really well for somebody within their home life or amongst their peer group, they will normally offer protection. So if we go to the next slide, please. One of those grooming notions after a friendship is formed is often, do you want to share some images? Show me an image of what you look like. That might quickly escalate to semi-naked images. One of the things that we see within exploitation is young people advising that majority of their peer group have shared an image at some point in a virtual relationship, in what is advised by young people as a trusted relationship. There's some questioning around that trusted relationship within a virtual world. And how do we really know someone in a virtual world? How do we know when to trust somebody in a virtual world? So different forms around communication and connecting with somebody who is at risk to a child is around maybe flirting with someone, seeking attention from someone they like, doing it for a joke. We get told that people shared an image because it was a joke. But at the same time, young people are embarrassed to say they've been pressured, manipulated, coerced, in fear of getting into trouble or being seen or judged as doing wrong. The next slide. So again, what can you do? You can talk to your peers around the different resources that are available once you know what they are yourself. There are on most applications a report button that at any time when somebody feels uncomfortable. So if somebody is asking them questions that make them feel uncomfortable instantly, they can just click on a button to report that. There's also many other resources that you can tap into, such as educational settings, so schools, youth providers, virtual groups online that have been created recently, such as youth hubs. Sometimes the conversation arises around banning technology and education. I don't think that that's our way forward. People sometimes think that education should be scaremongering our young people. We need to be really mindful of this and just focus on informing and creating that safe space to learn. Okay, next slide, Devon, please. So the Thinkuknow as a teen website, really interesting and really useful. And this teaches you and your peers a lot around internet access. It's around keeping yourself safe and keeping the internet fun. We know those social media platforms that are most risky are around Snapchat. People, you know, young people wanting to use streaking as much as they can to keep it going, to create that popularity amongst their peer group and create status. We know that people don't always necessarily turn off their Snap map because they want people to see where they are. They want people to know if they arrange to meet them, which route they're going to take or where the address is that they're going to meet. So for example, a Snap map would be easy if there was a party created, a party outside of the virtual world that might create vulnerability and risk, especially with that person that you have not met face to face. And that's the difficult bit. We always say, would you meet somebody that made you feel uncomfortable face to face again? The likelihood is not. But if in a virtual world it's different, and they make you feel uncomfortable and you refuse to do something, they may keep on coming back to you and back to you and back to you, making sure that they create that friendship, that trusted relationship that you think you've got, and eventually persuading or coercing you into things that you don't want to do, or your peer group. Next slide, Devon. So this is something really for any adults that are here today around resources for parents. Thinkuknow also offer information around supporting positive sexual behaviour. So acknowledging that young people do enter sexual relationships, but also acknowledging when that sexual relationship can turn to abuse. So we would be looking at things like the online grooming and how that works within the virtual world. The next slide, Devon. There is also parental information via the National Crime Agency and CEOP around any help and advice for families in a digital world. So that includes young people, parents and carers. And there's the click CEOP button that I was talking about earlier, the reporting mechanism when something's not quite right. What I would say is that you can report this anonymously. You can be reassured that once you click that button, somebody may contact you, but your details may not be shared with others, depending on whether you agree or not. So I guess that's right around consent, but it's reassuring that somebody will follow up that information. So it might be that you put on that you are a child or a young person. There's a drop down box there on that reporting mechanism that you can see. It tells you actually when you should be making a report, what happens and where that information goes and how they can help you further. That includes referring you to local services that you don't need to feel anxious about. The supporting mechanisms are there to enable you to understand and maybe reduce that risk if something's just gone a little bit too far that you really don't feel that you can get out of. And the next slide, Devon. So I guess the final thing for me is around making sure that you're up to date with what's going on in the world and how CEOP is keeping us safe. So there's Twitter handle there, Facebook handle. You can click on the website to get further information. these are in particular around those platforms that I talked about, including Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. For some of the younger ones would be Roblox, and there are a number of other identified platforms that are of particular interest to people who may want to abuse young people, may want to abuse their families. Okay, next. That is it from me within 15 minutes.